Start.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the work session for Monday, October 3rd, 2022. You may have noticed it is not the second Monday of the month. It is the first Monday of the month. So welcome to Bladetober. We did have to change the meeting date from next week to today, given some professional development that members of the council will be attending next week with the Maryland Municipal League's Fall Conference. So again, thank you to those who joined. The first item is to call the meeting to order, and we are now called to order. We'll move forward with the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Moved by Councilmember Blunt. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember McBride. Any discussion, corrections, or edits? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you. The next item is the approval of the September 12th work session minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Moved by Councilmember Brown. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Blunt. Any discussion, corrections, or edits? I did just want to ask, because it came up in a community forum, the updates regarding the Bladensburg High School track and field, and wanted to see if the council would be open to just adding in the notes that I shared from the last meeting, where I gave the status updates in terms of what percentage complete the various projects were. I can send that writing to Mr. Charnovich, but again, I went back to the recording last night from the meeting and just wanted to make sure the details were in there, because there's alumni from the high school who are starting to raise a ruckus because the project is incomplete. The information is not getting out to the community. And so just want to make sure in our records that it is reflected that we got the information, we shared it with the community, and that way they have it in writing. So if you all don't mind, I was just going to ask if we could include that language, and I'll literally copy and paste what I read to you all during the meeting in a note, send it to Mr. Charnovich following the meeting so he can just drop that in there. But that was the only edit I wanted to ask for. And no other. So with that, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
I'm sorry, we've moved and seconded. It's
Yeah.
properly seconded. And I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. So again, Mr. Charnovich, I have the language that I read. I'm just going to forward that to you. I'm going to pay attention now, but I'll do it after the meeting.
Sounds good, Mayor. Thank you very much. I'll look for that.
Perfect. Thank you. So item number 4 is appearances. And at the prior council meeting, we discussed rent stabilization programs to a small degree, but given some of the challenges that our residents are having, where they're going from steady rent amounts to having percentage increases that are upwards of 20, 25, 30%. And while that may not sound like a big number, if your monthly income is only $2,000 a month, say you're on a fixed retirement income, and you're used to paying $900, jumping up $300-ish is a significant portion of your income. And while that rental is going up, your income is not. Even with CPIU adjustments, it's not keeping pace. And so members of the council have been contacted by various members in the community because this is a concern, and they have tried to work with their property management company and don't seem to be getting favorable responses initially. And so as a council, we did briefly discuss this last month in terms of what can the town council do to help, from a legislative perspective. And one of the things that came up was certainly working through PGCMA and leveraging the power in numbers. So ideally, if we establish this as a legislative priority through PGCMA, then we're all speaking with one voice to the county, asking for some support with just saying, let's set some reasonable metrics in place so we're not gouging our residents and driving out good people in our community who've been wonderful neighbors, wonderful tenants. And so to help set the stage in the council packet, the legislation that we received from our counsel, our legal counsel, Mrs. Sue Ellen Ferguson, is here. This is the ordinance from the city of College Park. And then we were also provided with legislation from the city of Tacoma Park. And so I just want to turn it over to Mrs. Ferguson to just explain to the community exactly what rent stabilization programs are. And then based on her experience in working with other communities, just some examples of things that they did in order to establish these programs. And we don't want the rosy view because we understand one of our municipalities in the county did go down this road and they were sued. And so there can be financial impact, when you have those kinds of situations happen. And so we're not looking to make a decision tonight. We just want to understand the big picture, the things we need to consider, be educated on all of those things and how the process works. And again, that way, hopefully we can come to agreement with working with other municipalities to really push for some support on the county level and ultimately the state level with establishing some standards here. So Sue Ellen, sorry for the wordy preamble, but over to you.
It's good to see everybody. It's been a long time,
You too.
except for the chief. So in any event, it's true. I was part of College Park's effort to write a rent stabilization law. And they had a very organized set of landlords. And the folks that they were focusing on were the single family homes rentals, not all rentals. And so theirs would be different from what you're talking or thinking about. But the general proposition that the city was sued over was whether or not they had stated a public purpose that was going to be fulfilled or served by adopting rent stabilization. And because without that, the city wasn't going to be able to adopt the law. And so we anticipated in the beginning that there would be a lawsuit. And so when drafting the law, the public purpose was very clearly voted on by council and very clearly considered by an outside expert, Anirban Basu. And I don't know if you dealt with Dr. Basu. He actually speaks at MML every now and then. And he was the expert witness for the city, who then looked at, as an economist, looked at what the city wanted to accomplish and said that the law that they were adopting would give effect to that. So once then, when you go to court, the court is not able to say, well, I would have done this differently. They have to find one, whether or not a city can actually exercise rent stabilization authority. And they found that in the Court of Appeals level that yes, they can. And in fact, this is the most recent reported case establishing that, which is I think 10 years of rent stabilization was confirmed. I believe Tacoma Park also got sued when they adopted theirs years and years, decades ago. They've had theirs for decades. And in fact, when the city was going to adopt a law, the city of College Park, we met a couple of times with Tacoma Park to go over what they had done and the forms they used, because it's a form heavy thing. You set a baseline for everybody because you can't make them retrench usually, but you can make them prove up why they need increases going forward. And that's what the College Park law did, but only for single family homes, because those were the ones that they thought were their main purpose, frankly, was to encourage people who own single family homes not to go into the rental business. And they made no bones about it. They said, we need balance in these neighborhoods. And what was happening there was that investors were coming in and buying up single family homes for a lot more money than a family could pay for them, and then renting them to students. And those neighborhoods weren't built with the idea of having at least 5 different people in each house on the block. And so it was overwhelming, and rental after rental after rental. And so they came right out and said that that's part of our purpose here, is to control the balance of who's in our neighborhoods. And the court said, that's okay. And so your purpose would be more of the traditional type, which is to try to control pricing and link it in some way to actual cost of increased costs with a reasonable profit on top of it. I think probably what you're getting from these landlords is a reaction, and I'm assuming these are large multifamily buildings that are doing this.
Yeah,
They
that's
are
correct.
Okay, they are very well represented by a lobbying group, and probably do have the wherewithal to sue you if you were to adopt this law. And probably what they're doing is right now is recouping the fact that during the pandemic, some people took advantage of not being able to, not having to pay their rents, and not being able to be evicted, and didn't pay them. And then, are kind of judgment proof. So, they lost money doing that. There are ways to help cushion, I think, some of these effects. You have ARPA monies, and people who can show that they have been hurt by the pandemic can be given grants to help with their housing, as could under the CARES Act, I believe. So there are ways to do that if you're using, up to, what is it, $10 million, you don't really have to prove up anything to the federal government except that you used it for a public purpose. It's not a detailed accounting, and I'm sure Vito knows all about that at this point. So it's not as if you have to have a specific category that fits, that you have to prove you matched, like some of the bigger governments that got more money than 10 million. So you could use that as a fund to help people who are having difficulty getting to their rent every month. The build up to rent stabilization, as I said, is expensive. If you're talking about multifamily high rises, they're well enough funded that they can sue you. If they sue you for damages, then Legit will defend you. And in College Park's case, Legit did defend them. And so it became something that your insurance carrier handled. It depends on how the case comes in as to whether there's damages and what Legit's willing to do. Also, I think they've been streamlining. They are handling more things these days for you. And it's always good to ask. But on the other hand, recently I had to do, College Park got sued on a zoning matter, and they asked me to handle it because they didn't have anybody that really specialized in doing zoning work. So they can bring in outside counsel. When College Park was sued, I asked Legit to bring in outside counsel because they were being sued by, the city was being sued by somebody who was very well known in the courts of appeal. And I thought that we were not going to stand a great chance unless we got somebody who had kind of equal stature with that. And in fact, the city did win. And in part, that was because of that. So you have to decide what program you're going to adopt. And College Parks is a, hard to slog through. You can see that it's very city specific. And yours would look different because you have high rises that you're mainly looking at. And the city had different kinds of buildings. They had single family homes, duplexes, triplexes, up to quadruplexes, and that's where they stopped. You would be really dealing with just the multifamilies, I assume. And so you have to figure out a way to set your baseline, and you also have to have somebody who will administer this for you. Because what happens is you set a limit, and then if they want to exceed that limit, they have to file and show you why, how costs have increased and what it is they are financing with this increase. Plus, they're still allowed a reasonable rate of return. If you don't allow them that, then it's a confiscation, and you can't do that. You know, DC has had a rent control, and we prefer not to call it control, it's rent stabilization, because that's really what you're doing. You're trying to make it so it just doesn't keep shooting up all the time. DC's had it for years and years. And Maryland has confirmed that you can do it twice now. So I don't see that changing. It's just, who do you want to control and how are you going to administer that so it's done fairly? College Park had to put together a rent stabilization board, and you can see in that law how they created that to decide cases when landlords came in and said, I want to raise the rents. And this is why. But mainly what they had trouble with is that you all know that if you have more than 10% of your population that ignores a law, it's almost impossible to enforce it. And if your landlords don't go by this law, then you have to start making them. And showing that they're not complying could be hard. So it depends on how aggressive and adversarial they are. Mostly corporations don't start out that way and don't want to start out with you that way. And so my suggestion is that you try to put together some kind of, I don't know, conference with the big owners to get an explanation of why you're getting these kinds of complaints. Is it primarily your senior citizen population? And maybe there's a way that they can assist with that. You know, it depends. And you can ask for their consideration so that you don't have to go the next step. And you can say, you've been asked to do this or to consider it, and you know that it would be a big change for them and it would be a big change for you. And so before doing that, you want to just search out maybe some way of making an agreement with them, kind of have a summit with them and say, this is the problem that we're dealing with. The people are looking to us as the government to resolve it. We know we can adopt rent stabilization, but again, that's a big change for everybody. And we'd like to see if there's something short of that we could arrange. It could be that they come to people and say, okay, well, we did just increase, and it's because of these reasons, and there are, I'm sure, some, but we're not going to increase for the next number of years. So that you would know possibly that if you helped out for the first couple, maybe, that the weight would be less on the residents. I don't know why they're doing this. My guess is that the cost of most materials, maintenance has gone up. The cost of salaries has gone up because a lot of people didn't return to the workforce. We have inflation, as you know. And they weren't able to collect money from folks for a couple of years. And I'm sure they had a significant, no, I'm sure, but I'm going to guess that they had a not insignificant percentage of people, and it wouldn't take much, not paying and knowing they can't be evicted. So College Park tried to do that, but they tried to work with the landlords, And those landlords were not corporate landlords. They were by and large individuals, families who had made their money off of renting single-family homes for many years. And also new on the scene investors who tended to be small investors who would buy these houses and then turn them into rentals. So you're dealing with a different group. It's a smaller group, but they might listen to reason because they really don't like rent stabilization. They hate it.
So Sue Ellen, I appreciate you walking us through the bigger picture, the impacts, what it took for these municipalities to get this program started, and again, for sharing the legislation that they enacted. I want to open it up to the council for questions, and I know I have a couple too. Because it just, to your point, it seems like we're better off at least trying to meet with them, not just one, but just broadly meet with the owners in the community to try to start this conversation and figure out how we can work together and not immediately go to, trying to go down this road of a rent stabilization program in Bladensburg just yet. However, there's some challenges. In the past, I recall there was a law with the county. So for seniors, their rent could not be increased more frequently than I think every 2 years.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that that's still on the books, but that is something that I feel like as a legislative priority, we can just re-up that to our county council members and just see where it is. And if it's lying dormant, if that could be reenacted. And my understanding is there were also some county laws made with respect to the amount of increases and the frequency of those increases for multifamily housing. Are you familiar with either of those pieces of
Definitely
legislation?
not, but they would not be that difficult to find if they're still there. I know they used to have a landlord tenant commission, which they don't have anymore. So I don't know how long that that governor on rent lasted, or if it's still there. Obviously, if it's still there and the rent increases that are being imposed are more than that, then you would certainly want to get the county council, the county involved, and the assistance of your county council member if that's available.
Okay, perfect. I made that note here. And then just wanted to ask, because I'm not sure if the other council members saw this, but while you had, and I'm thinking about College Parks legislation specifically, so they had the board that was established and it consisted of members of the community. So I think it was 2 owners, 2 renters, so that you had a broad group of voices. But there were some things in there where the property managers were required to present or report documentation on the amount of rental that they were charging per year for their units and provide that information to the city. College Park is much busier than us. So I'm imagining if we go down this road, we would have to think about additional staffing because you'd have to have a staff member who's dedicated to getting the reporting on a regular basis. And if the reporting is missing from, I don't know, James Corporation, going after them to make sure they get it. And if they're not submitting things that are true and honest. And when the city audits, I've read that if they've reported bad information that, and it looks like it was intentional, there's fines and penalties. There's this whole administrative arm and process that goes along with it. And I'm just thinking with our current government structure, we would definitely need that internal capacity to have someone. But do you know for College Park if they have a specific person who's dedicated to managing this process, or is it just like under the clerk, for example, or code enforcement?
To clarify, they no longer use this law.
Oh,
They stopped, and I'll explain that in a minute. When they were using the law, they did have staff liaison for this to the Rent Stabilization Board. And the Rent Stabilization Board did require a good bit of assistance to obtain the records and keep track of them. So yes, this is an administratively, it's a weight. Somebody's got to be in the administration to handle that. You can't rely on volunteers to do all that. It won't work. College Park stopped using this because the landlords were so up in arms about it and so angry that they started just misbehaving in all sorts of other ways. And they put together a group to come to the city and say, we will work with you on this to be better. Because the city really wanted, as I said, wanted to limit the number of these houses in a neighborhood, in part because of their really bad behaviors that were going on, because it's mostly students, of crowding the houses and then having 300 people in the backyard at 2 a.m. kind of parties, that kind of thing, roaming around the streets. And they promised that they would make everybody behave better if the city would stop enforcing the law. Plus, as I said, most of the landlords ignored the law and were refusing to go by it. And so we had way more than your 10% non-compliance. And it was going to
Thank
be
you
another
for that.
big lift to get that. So the city decided to give that a try because they hated it so much. And as I said, landlords do not want rent stabilization anywhere in their jurisdiction. It gives people ideas, they think, and they don't want that to spread. It's very hard to have a system that really works, and they don't want anybody else getting one. So that's what they think.
So Ellen, there's a question from Councilmember Brown. I want to get her in case it's about this subject that you're on at the moment. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, of course it's about this subject.
I'm sorry
I
about
just-
what she was saying about the owners getting together and not being compliant with it.
Yeah.
So
I want to know, what is the impact of not having zoning authority? So does the not having zoning authority, how does that weight?
it's not a zoning matter, or College Park wouldn't have been able to do it either because they don't.
Okay.
So it's not that. It's
Mhm.
regulation based on something other than the use that's being made of the property. So that does not limit you. Zoning, to a certain extent, applies because you can't have multifamily rentals unless you have a multifamily zone. But these buildings are already built, so
Right.
it's an accepted use.
Mhm.
And you also get the pushback from the landlords that it's making it very difficult for them with rent stabilization to make upgrades, to respond to resident complaints, that type of thing. You'll hear a lot of that. So
Mhm.
they generally will push back pretty hard on something like that. I could, in terms of what the county still has on the books, we can take a look and see pretty quickly whether that's still there. And if that in fact is, you would have to have the residents come in and show you what their rent was and what it is now, and show you that it's exceeding whatever limit had been placed. And it may be that there is a year over year increase that can happen. And
What
maybe,
could you say, according to the county regs?
yeah, and it may be that the landlords didn't take advantage of that for a couple of years and then now are just jumping up. I don't know, but
Right.
the most sensible thing to do, if there's something that you can use with the county, to use it. Because
Mhm.
and I think that would strengthen what we talked about last time in trying to push this through PGCMA. So doing it across all 27 municipalities to the
Right.
county, because there's strength in numbers. And it's certainly not an issue that's primarily affecting us. In the most egregious cases, we have a property manager who purchased a building in town, and upon the, hate to say takeover, but upon the purchase, immediately started doing things like you have 30 days to renew your lease with $300 extra tagged on there. And oh, by the way, now you have to pay utilities while utilities were previously included. And so that example that I used previously, sadly, was one of the eldest residents in that complex who ended up being displaced. She was basically homeless because this new management company came in and wanted to charge hundreds of dollars more, and she couldn't afford that. And I noticed in the legislation too, there was clear language about if you are increasing rents, you have to give at least 2 months notice, not as in this example, and I won't say the resident's name, but I think she got 30 days or just above that. So I think you're right, Ms. Ferguson. There's a lot here. And just learning from taking, insights from lessons learned from College Park. I'm not sure we need to go charging down the role of rent stabilization quite yet. Just do our homework. If you can help us track down that legislation from the county, both for senior rentals.
Get it and wait for the phone. I'm clear until 6:30.
Okay, yeah, if you can help us find that, that would be great. And then the county legislation as well, so we can circulate it to everyone here. And in preparation for the next PGCMA meeting, be prepared to bring that up to the group. But
Right.
Councilmember Blunt, I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you had questions, or Councilmember McBride. Okay.
My guess is that for the lady that sent you her information, that at some point she had moved over to month. And that's why she got 30 days notice, because if you have a month-to-month, then it is just month-to-month. And a lot of times that's what happens. You'll have a year-long lease and then it moves over to month-to-month. And mostly tenants like that, if they're not going to be long-term, because then they can give notice and it's only 30 days notice they have to give.
Yeah, sadly with this resident and a few others in the building, that was not the case. So
But
it's,
years-
it's a mess.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are doing our best to help. I know between Councilmember Brown, she's been in a meeting with the residents, Councilmember Rout, myself. We're really trying to help, like you said, as the government step in, getting help from staff to try to right the ship. But
If there's an ongoing lease, then a buyer is going to have to honor that. The terms on that until the term goes away, because they, generally speaking, have acquired not only the benefits of the building, but the drawbacks of the building. So that is something I would push individually if she's not on a month-to-month.
okay, that makes sense. Well, we appreciate you adjusting your schedule to join us. And I know I learned a lot. I hope everyone else benefited from just understanding what other municipalities have done. And we'll definitely look out for the information if you're able to track that down, so we can reference that as we move forward.
Okay, I will check now.
All right. Thank you again for joining us. It was great seeing you after many, many months. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Thank you. So we don't have any items under old business at this time, so we'll move right into new business items. The first item on the list, as many in the community know, we've been without a town administrator for a few months now, and appreciate Mr. Charnovich stepping in to serve as interim town administrator, but for his sanity, we do not want to burn him out. And there's a lot of projects that we have happening in town. And so just wanted to talk through with the council the ability to move forward with a hiring firm to support our search for our next town administrator. And the proposals were shared with you, I believe, last Friday. And then there was also a summary just breaking out the cost between each of the firms. And so with Baker Tilly, their proposal was $26,950. They did provide a detailed attachment. And basically, you'll notice we had explored this back in 2021, but we didn't go forward when we got proposals. But the dated proposal for 2021, everything was the same except that current fee. So all the other information was fine. So they didn't update that. The next one on the spreadsheet is Mercer Group. Mercer is a local firm also able to do the search for us. They're local in Maryland, which is a benefit. So if we need them to come in, for example, to sit in on interviews and things like that, at least they wouldn't be traveling far from out of state. I do understand from talking to some folks at Chevrolet that they helped with their town administrator search, their public works director search, and also a previous police chief search. So they've had some success working with Mercer Group, and you'll see their fee for the project. They held their 2021 price, which was $17,500. And then they do advise you that there could be additional fees if they have to do advertising, printing, limited travel, again, coming in to meet with us, not to exceed $5,500. They did also mention that they're willing to provide a discount if we support both the town administrator search and our public works director search. So just wanted to make the council aware of that. With Novak Consulting Group, their search ranges between 27,000 and 30,000, and the additional cost for ads and background checks and so forth. Again, that comes outside of that 27 to 30K. They are also local. Slavin Management is based in Georgia. They say their costs are not to exceed $24,149. Again, can offer the same services in terms of nationwide search, supporting, posting the job, meeting with us to get our input similar to the other firms. And then the final one is Wolf Creek Consulting. They are a minority owned firm, which is great in terms of supporting diversity. Their standard fee is equal to 25% of the candidate's first year compensation, which in this case would be about 30,000. So again, on that higher end, and willing to discount if we had their support for multiple searches. But just looking through the proposals, looking through the services and understanding what we need, I was going to just open it up to see, what thoughts you all had. My initial thought was to proceed with Mercer Group just because they're on the more reasonable end, not that 30,000 end of the spectrum, which just seems pretty high to me, but just want to come back to the council and get your input. So Councilmember Blunt, I want to come to you first.
Again, we did talk about it in 2021. So at this point, whatever decision you make, you better at that than I am. So you can take the lead with that one.
No, it's a team. We all need our input.
I have.
Yeah. And we have tried, right? We work together. We
Mhm.
tried. Unfortunately, we're in the position where we need to hire again. And so just to have an objective process, someone leading while we're doing our day-to-day jobs and then pulling us in where there is information to report, like here's resumes, we want to have you doing the pre-screens. I think it's going to help all of us, but also keep the process moving. One of the other things with Mercer is they have a 120-day window. So by 6 months from now, that's when we should have our person either starting or confirmed, signed offer letter and getting ready to start. So that way we can start 2023 fresh, fully staffed, hopefully, and ready to hit the ground running. But Councilmember Brown, I want to come to you for your input. We can't hear you, but I'm sure everything you said was wonderful.
I said, thank you, Mayor. Thanks. Yeah, so after having reviewed the Excel spreadsheet, you bring out a lot of valid points. And I think there are some benefits with having the Mercer Group, one being local, and with that 120-day window, that 6-month period, is it guaranteed, or if we don't find anyone within that time frame, what are the offerings? But I think that this is, you all have previously vetted, and with their offerings, I and with their price and with some track record, the history behind them, that we can also reference. The Mercer Group looks good to me as well, because I just have that other question about the 100 and was 120 days, the 6 months.
And I think we should definitely, I appreciate your feedback. I made a note and put an asterisk next to it to ask what will they offer us if they don't meet that? So is it a financial discount? Is it, what is it? You know, so they can let us know. But thank you for that input. Councilmember McBride?
Okay, you had lost me for a minute. But yeah, I
I
thought about
thought
the
you got
same.
tired of us and said, I'm done with this. I'm going to get dinner.
My internet went out. But nevertheless, but I like the Mercer Group also. And I looked at the benefit of the cost. And I've heard about Mercer Group before, so that's why it's kind of interesting to me. But I would like to see what they have to offer too.
Great, thank you for that feedback. And just for the benefit of the residents who are watching, the services or the steps that they are proposing to support the town with for the town administrator recruitment process are position analysis. So just making sure that the position is defined in terms of the requirements of the position as well as the job qualifications. So they would help us put together a position profile and then do recruitment analysis. And the recruitment will be regional, but it will also be national, which I think could be in our best interest. You never know who's looking to come to this area from another great market with some wonderful skill sets. They would also support resume review. Again, just identifying who those most qualified candidates are that are received. They would support the candidate screening, the background investigations. They would also help with the interview process, so making recommendations to help assist with that process. And then they'll also help us with the salary negotiations and follow-up. It says we will facilitate employment and follow up to ensure complete integrity in the process. So again, they're local. They've worked for other municipalities, so I feel like their honors on the line, if you will. They want to do a good job with Bladensburg because they know they're in Maryland and we're connected to so many other municipalities. They're going to want us to say that this was a good experience and they provided a valuable service to us. So this is on the 7 o'clock meeting agenda under financial business so that we can do a formal vote in order to move forward on the proposal that the council is in favor of. But again, thank you all for weighing in. And Councilmember Blunt, like you said, we've been through it before, so we're just so ready. So ready.
Right.
She shook her head like, yes, enough already. Let's see.
Excuse me, ma'am, just real quick, sorry, just want to make us
Mhm.
aware of the time. I think it's like 6:13, so just, kind of
Yes.
helping to be a little timekeeper here.
Thank you. So the next item is our legislative priorities for the next legislative session coming up, going from starting in January 2023 through April 2023. And in the packets, you'll find the list of last year's priorities. And I wanted to just open it up to the council to ask for recommendations on this year's priorities, understanding some things are not done and may need to stay on the list because we still have work to do. But for example, with rent stabilization, would you all be open to putting that down as a legislative priority or under our county goals, where, as Sue Ellen was mentioning before, this is something we take to our county elected officials to get their support on, especially leveraging the power of PGCMA. Sorry, Councilmember
Well,
Brown.
yes, yes, absolutely. I don't have a lot to add to it, but yes.
Yes.
Okay. And Councilmember Blunt, would that work for you? Adding it to the list to work through PGCMA? Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. And then some of the items on here, such as land use, again, when it comes to planning and zoning, it's more of an ongoing thing that we just have to continue to work through, especially with the county map amendment that was recently approved without our request, particularly regarding the major piece of land on Annapolis Road. But the small cell legislation has that died down in terms of the controversy, or I shouldn't even say controversy, but in terms of the noise that you're hearing. About 4 years ago, it was a hot topic because the concern was that they would start putting up the infrastructure in our communities without having to come to us for any sort of permitting. They would just go straight to the county for that, and you'd see these large 5G, if not towers, boxes that look like cabinets or closets throughout your community. And they were not very attractive in some cases. But I noticed that 5G is becoming more and more talked about in terms of the retail sector. So I don't know that this is completely gone away, but just want to mention I'm not hearing as much. You all may be hearing more about it. So if you want to keep that on, that works as well. And with the dredging of the river, again, another ongoing thing for about the last 15 years, and think we definitely should take advantage of the elections outcome and really push for some federal dollars on that. Callabus is still on here, just asking the county to expand and improve that service. And we just have to keep asking until they do it. Just keep pushing. The wayfinding signage, working with park and planning to identify funding to really distinguish our community so that people know they're here. There's a sense of place and it's clear what the historic attractions are. So that is under county. Under state legislation, the new town hall still remains. We've got work to do. We've got some money, but hopefully once the consultant is on board and we start moving forward, we can start moving on that project, but we'll most likely have to go back for additional funding. Bostwick House, same situation with that. Law enforcement Bill of Rights can come off given the sweeping legislation from the last session, unless there's a desire from the council to really push for local accountability boards. Right now it's with the county, which is problematic for municipalities who have their own police departments. So what is the pleasure of the council? Chief, any feedback? Because I know you've been watching the aftermath of the legislation passing.
Good afternoon, Matt,
Good
and
afternoon.
council colleagues. Yes, man, I've been, on top of the new legislation, and we're moving forward, especially working with our colleagues around the county. There are a lot of new legislation that have been put forth that really the municipalities and the county and the state aren't really prepared for, because this was a quick turnaround and the accountability study came out and the laws changed. But realistically, no one was really prepared on how these things would take place and what they would really look like within respective municipalities. And I do know, as you stated, most of the municipalities have allowed the county to hold the accountability boards because they just don't have the resources and the bandwidth to withstand it.
And so, Chief, from your perspective, would that be in our best interest, at least for now, while things are transitioning, to see how this goes before we make a hard stance that no, we need to have our own police accountability board right here that's based on residents in our community sitting on there with, someone in leadership like yourself or someone else in the command staff?
Well, it's always advantageous for the local jurisdiction to handle their own, because who knows the community, who knows the officer better than the community we serve. So with that being said, I would say yes, we should look forward to doing our own accountability board, because we are Bladensburg, and we know Bladensburg. We know our residents, and our residents know our officers. So to be transparent and have an independent outside entity look at us, um, they can be unbiased. They should be unbiased, but they really don't know the history of Bladensburg officers and Bladensburg residents. And I think that since we are Bladensburg, we should handle our own affairs as opposed to sending them out. I think that we have competent people in town that can serve as accountability representatives and also look at things from different global lenses and come up with decision on the accountability of our police officers.
Thank you for that, Chief. So with that in mind, would the council be okay leaving on there advocating for municipalities to establish their own police accountability boards? Okay.
Down for that, yeah.
Okay. Councilmember Brown?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Chief. Yeah, I mean, I think so. But then I also think that maybe there's still some type of collaboration or connection with the county police accountability board as well, so that we because the county police do come into the municipalities. But I
So
think
maybe
I
having
think-
a
I would think it-
member serve on it. Is that what you're thinking, council
on
member?
the county one, but definitely the municipalities having their own as well.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Councilmember McBride. Uh-oh, I think her internet might have dropped
Mhm.
again. Okay, so we'll keep moving right along so we can get through the rest of the items. But again, just wanted to bring these before the council and see if there were any modifications that we need to change, and then we can vote on the priorities in the next meeting. And again, I did note for the PGCMA priorities that we really want to advocate for the rental stabilization as a county, not just going alone for Bladensburg, especially as Mrs. Ferguson was talking about towns being sued. We don't, yeah. I saw Mrs. Councilmember Blunt's face. I'm like, yeah, that, what she said. So the next item is really quick. The county executive has been doing her Growing Green with Pride events annually. And the next one, one is in the spring, one is in the fall. So the next date that's been identified is October 15th. It's a Saturday. And the time frame, I believe, is 9 till about noon. And so wanted to just support that effort and ask if the council would be in favor of just working together to get students involved in coming out, cleaning up, hopefully engage our green team in coming out and identifying a site in Ward 1 and a site in Ward 2 for the cleanup. That would be one ask. And then in our last meeting, as we were talking about stormwater management, one of the council members brought up, may have been Councilmember Rout, about video recording the installation of the rain barrels. And so as a green effort on that particular day when we're doing Growing Green with Pride, we could even have the organization that came out this summer for our big effort at Bostwick House install the last of the rain barrels that were ordered for that property. And we just record that as a tutorial so we can post that. We're doing education. We've got the cleanups going on, and there's a lot happening to make Bladensburg Growing Green with Pride. But open to other ideas. I mean, if the seniors want to come out, Councilmember Blunt, they've helped before. I won't say their names, but along the woods next to Emerson House, some of my buddies over there, we were pulling all kinds of things out of those woods, trying to clean it up and make it pretty as kids walk to school every day. So the seniors will help if you ask.
I would, and question,
Mhm.
you know, 6011, where all that
Mhm.
trash is, will we be able to go onto that property just to, or even recruit some people out of that building just to clean that area up as well?
That's a
Or
good
just-
idea. Yeah, I can reach out
Mhm.
and see if they would be interested in partnering with us. We can help, but because it's private, we
Oh,
would
yeah, that's what I'm
definitely
wondering.
want residents from the building out there working with us.
Mhm.
And I don't think it would take very long. So we could do that and do our usual 57th main corridor cleanup. So that's at 6011 Emerson.
And you mean
Okay.
actually going down in those woods?
Oh, you mean behind it?
Well,
Oh,
no, I'm talking about here.
oh,
Where
yeah,
Emerson
yeah,
House
we've
is.
done it. We've done it. I'm not going to tell you all the things we pulled out on the meeting, but I'll
Oh,
tell you
geez.
separately. Yes, we loaded up a truck. So
Yes,
it's
yes.
frustrating because I just don't understand why you can't put those things in the trash. It's your neighborhood. You should take pride in it, and we will continue to try.
Oh,
So
boy.
yeah, okay. So I'll follow up on that, council member. And then the next item is the Resilience Hub. Mr. Charnovich, I want to turn it over to you for this one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, everyone this evening. So I had the opportunity recently in the last week or two to join a call with the mayor, some Prince George's County representatives, and as well as the town of Cheverly, regarding the concept of resilience hubs. And for everyone on the call, in essence, what a resilience hub is kind of a location that is used in case of an emergency situation. It can be used in a variety of different ways, whether it's food support, clean water, there's clean energy, there's a heating station, electric station to charge essential devices or essential medicines. There's a lot of different concepts as far as what it can be used for. Now, my understanding, the purpose of the call, the initial call, kickoff call we were on with Cheverly, is that the Prince George's County representatives are seeking some local government support in working to get grant funding. I think it's through FEMA and or MEMA to establish these resilience hubs. And they're looking, without getting too far into the weeds, they're looking at different aspects of the region in all of Prince George's County to try and set up these hubs that can help the entire region, including Bladensburg, but it would also help many different areas within the region. And they asked us to think through some areas within Bladensburg that may be good options to set up these resilience hubs. And I think one of our next steps, Mayor, is that we are going to also chat with Cheverly about this in a separate meeting. But that is kind of the concept, is that they're seeking local government support to help apply for this grant from MEMA, because I guess having some government support would give them leverage to have a greater opportunity to get funding to help this for this service, which would help the entire region. That's sound about right, Mayor?
It does. And the beauty of it is really this is a pilot. So the county hasn't done this program before. And so it is a privilege that they came to Bladensburg and Cheverly to just say it or ask if this is something we'd be interested in exploring with them. There were some considerations when they looked at communities to consider. And so they looked at those that are most impacted in terms of when devastation does happen. So income, demographics, and those kind of variables definitely played a role here. And thinking back to September 20th, had we already established a resiliency hub when residents needed to be evacuated from their homes. Let's say we partnered with Bladensburg Community Center for the Bladensburg hub, we would have already established volunteers who come to support the people there. There may be situations where folks had to grab medication. So we would have the means for them to store their medication while the emergency situation, flooding or whatever the case may be, it could have been a tornado, let's say, are being resolved. It has the ability to have a system developed, and we get to formulate that. Or if we get our CERT team going, this is where the CERT team, the community emergency response team, would be critical because we'd have the volunteers identified, our plan for providing food to those impacted, immediate resources, and then if needed, the relationship with, let's say, Red Cross, if they need overnight accommodations or something like that. And the idea is that, again, we partner with Cheverly, but some of the unincorporated areas near us, so that we may be in a situation where, because of an emergency, we may get residents who are in the unincorporated area, which is literally right across this Annapolis Road, right across the street, but they're impacted. They're between Bladensburg and Cheverly, therefore they're in our hub. So they would be able to come to either Cheverly or Bladensburg, again, just throwing out the example of the community center, to get support. And so, again, it's not asking us for money out of pocket. It's just OEM, the Office of Emergency Response for the county, was asking if this is something we'd be interested in. And so wanted to bring it up to everyone here, just because I'm really concerned with global warming and climate change. The weather is getting more and more severe. These so-called 1 in 100-year storms seem to be happening 4 and 5 times a year. And so just thinking, if we can get the funding from either federal government through FEMA or Maryland government through MEMA to really get a robust program together, it could really help shore up, our response. So we're not just relying on code enforcement and the police department to help evacuate people, but we don't have any resources for them beyond that. So just wanted to, put the idea out there for your feedback. And then if everyone's on board, Rich and I will then follow up with Cheverly, and you all are welcome, even if we have to figure out how to do this, because I want to make sure we have broad support from the council, so that as we're building our plan, we take everyone's input in terms of building the right resources and making it as robust as possible. So any comments or questions from the council?
No,
Again, not asking for money, not asking for money, just not asking for money.
But no, I really love that, because I often think if something would happen to these seniors, where are they going to go? So yes, for that. And if I can be a part of it, this speaking in the seniors, please allow me to work with that, with the seniors.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Councilmember Rout, I see your hand, and welcome.
Thank you.
So
I'm
glad you
so
made
sorry.
it. No, it's fine.
Congress is on us right now. So I'm sorry. Appropriation time. But I think this is excellent, especially for those that are disabled, that live in Ward 1 disabled, with, in the homes. Like, in the event of something, for individuals that are disabled, it's going to be hard for them their family just to evacuate them out. So I definitely think that this would be great. Not that Ward 2 doesn't have any disabled individuals, but
We get it. We get it.
Okay.
Ward 1 council member, we got you.
Okay.
And now to our other Ward 1 council member, who's probably going to echo. No, I'm teasing. Go ahead, Councilmember Brown.
Hello. This is Echo. Sorry. Chief, you're not laughing. Oh,
I'm good.
You didn't like my hello? It was my echo.
I did. I thought it was two devices open.
Yeah, and someone from firsthand experience of experiencing the microburst here in Bladensburg in 2012. I think it sounds great, even though it's going to be a pilot, and just would love to hear a little bit more about it. And in terms of the level of effort with overseeing the grant and those other types of details, but the normal stuff. But otherwise, yeah, I think it sounds like something really, really great.
Thank you for that reminder and feedback, Councilmember Brown, because I recall at that time, you all had to use the Bladensburg High School for shelter for those impacted by that storm. And calls were being made,
It was a port town.
Sorry,
Port town.
That's right. And that's kind of what stuck in my head, is really getting ahead of that. So we're not in the moment seeking, okay, where can we get them? Councilmember Brown, can you call Bladensburg Elementary? Councilmember Blunt, can you call the high school? Just really having established locations and
Yeah.
identified for various needs. So if you have pets, maybe we have to take you to town hall. And then maybe if you need wheelchair access, perhaps it's the community center because it's on one level and you can be wheeled in and, so just to really think through and learn from that experience in particular, because that microburst was something else. I think there's a lot of lessons learned that we can pull from there and plan, for the future.
Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you for that feedback and the reminder about that storm. Not forget that. And so with the next item on tonight's agenda, I shared with you all a proposal for ARPA food assistance, a project that potentially could be done with some of our nonprofit partners in the community. And so the backstory is Now Foundation, one of the founders reached out to me to ask if we might be interested in a turkey drive. And I feel like we should work smarter, not harder. And so Victory Grace Center, for probably going back to 2015 when they first started at Bladensburg High School, has annually done a Thanksgiving drive to help really the port towns. They started doing it primarily in Bladensburg, and then about 2 years ago, I think they shifted to Edmonston. And so they served last year, I think it was about 600 to 700 families from the Edmonston site. And so in thinking about the request from Now Foundation, I was thinking, well, I wonder if VGC, since they have a good infrastructure, they've got the vendors lined up, if they would partner so we could do a Bladensburg location like we used to at the high school, and then they do the other distribution in Edmonston, because of course we don't want to take away from our port towns, sister city. And so in talking with VGC, they indicated that they would be willing to work with us. And so again, help do the shopping, store the items so we wouldn't have town hall bogged down with all these boxes of rice and beans and those kinds of things. They'll take care of that and store them until the morning of the food drive, which they're proposing for Saturday, November 19th. So the Saturday before Thanksgiving. And what they're suggesting is at least by 7 a.m. that morning, they would have a truck come to Bladensburg, drop off the turkeys, all the items that are listed on the proposal, which are for the benefit of the public: stuffing, mashed potatoes, canned gravy, rice, 2 cans of black beans, 2 cans of green beans, 2 cans of corn, Jiffy stuffing, 2 boxes, cake mix, cranberry sauce, and then of course the turkeys. So they would drop everything off and we'd have our volunteers there in the cafeteria, let's say at the high school, packing the boxes is how we normally do it. And then when cars pull up, you drop in a turkey, you drop in their basket with all the additional items, and they go on their way. And so the principal of Bladensburg High School did let me know today that if this is something that we want to move forward with, she's happy to host us, happy to help us get students to volunteer who need community service hours. So we'd have lots of manpower. We would need some traffic support, of course, just with lining the cars up in the parking lot and getting them out quickly. But the other thing that they would need is the financial support, because obviously donations are a little tight given inflation and everything else. And so I wanted to just bring this up for the council to consider supporting it financially through the ARPA funding, given we've set aside $20,000 for food assistance. And when we talked about this topic previously, as we were thinking through the allocations, we were saying it makes sense to just do this smart, not harder. And so find organizations that are able to partner with us and kind of take on some of the heavy lifting as we try to do food assistance, because we know what it's like with the food distributions. We went through that for over a year, every, Thursday, Friday, getting the volunteers, the police department, and so forth. And so having a nonprofit organization who has that structure in place to help support just will make it flow so much smoother. So again, wanted to get your feedback on this particular item. Councilmember Rao, your hand is like waving. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, I see you. Sorry. I was like, maybe she's fixing her hair. I don't know. It was like off
I
camera.
was fixing it, but I also wanted to, I'm very interested. I think this is good. But I was thinking that whoever's going to be doing the handling, I think it would be only fair for an administrative cost that we attach on. I don't know if it's both organizations or just one, but you know, they have for gas to go pick up the items, for trucks if they have to, you know, transport things. I don't know if they pay their volunteers or workers a stipend. Oftentimes these 501c3s and C4 organizations, you know, they are giving back to the community, but you know, I would like to see some type of administrative fee or something that we can come up with. I don't know what the standard is, but that's the only addition I have. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback, Councilmember Rao. And I think that's an important consideration because as we were talking, they did mention that they would have to rent the box trucks to keep everything in, to, you know, shop, take it to their site where they store it, and then on the actual days, load that up and bring it to the communities. And they anticipated by doing 2 sites this year, the rental fees would be for Bladensburg and Edmonston. But I didn't want to bog you guys down with that. I was like, I'll help them get donations from elsewhere if we can do this. But I mean, if the council is open to it, it makes their lives easier to just say the administrative fee for the gas, the to help offset the cost of renting the $600 refrigerated truck. If that's the case, it could very well be that by November it's so cold that the turkeys will maintain in the truck, and you may not, maybe they can just do the regular, you know, $150 rental. But I think you're right, it would definitely help because I feel bad having them go in the pocket. I know they don't pay the volunteers, but just doing the additional things like the truck rentals, the gas when they do the shopping, and the bags to purchase, you know, or boxes to put the sides in. So open it up. I know Councilmember Blunt, you do a lot with nonprofits. What do you think would make sense for something like an administrative fee?
Yes, I agree with that. I do
Okay.
agree with that. But I did have one question. And I know the seniors going to be in that line because they went over to Edmiston and they wasn't supposed to, but I can't stop them. Instead of turkeys, can they, you know, I don't think a senior should have a big turkey. I just don't. I think they should set aside for seniors a small chicken because a turkey would be too much. And they already get a lot of donations from the brown bags. And I'm speaking of my seniors, Parkview and Newton Green, as I've helped them every year with the food. So if you all can set aside or work with someone there that can, how many seniors will be served in the building, and only give them chickens instead of turkeys.
Gotcha. So I'm just making a note about that, or someone noted Cornish hens, but I know what you mean, just a smaller amount that wouldn't be quite so large, like
Right.
a
Not a
turkey.
Cornish hen though, that's too
Oh,
small, but a
oh.
chicken.
Portion
chicken.
No,
control.
I just thought